great, but that's not a spiritual intention. Fast with a spiritual intention. Put your mind, not because I want to lose weight, but because I want to sacrifice. And remember, the idea behind it is not that God wants to see us suffer, right? God, remember the dogma that we talked about, that God is simple, right? That doesn't mean he's stupid, right? To say that God is simple means that, how would you describe God? You would describe God as loving and merciful and holy and just. But God is also one. So he is all those things at the same time. He's never loving here and then merciful there and just there. He's all of that at once. So when you perform some sacrifice, you are calling down God's justice on yourself. But when you call down God's justice on yourself, you automatically get God's mercy in much greater abundance than your measly little piece of justice by not eating a piece of chocolate on a Friday or something like that. So that's kind of the idea of that. And there's more to it. We could talk about it some more when we get to Lent.
What is the fasting on Ash Wednesday?
Who remembers exactly? One full meal and no meat at all, right? One full meal and two smaller meals when combined that can't equal one regular meal, something like that. So I think a good way is one full meal and then two snacks.
Not much of a fast.
There's not much of a fast.
Especially if you have one very big meal, then you can have two moderates.
But you can go beyond what is written on that one, right?
Well, when I was a graduate student, some of my Muslim friends, they say, well, Ramadan is a period, it's a day of fast, right? So he goes, what we do, it's like their equivalent of Fat Tuesday. He goes, we eat so much the day before that we literally get ourselves sick and can't look at food on Ramadan. Isn't that a great intention, a fasting intention? You see? That makes as much sense as Fat Tuesday in New Orleans, right? Well, let's get drunk and just kind of obliterate ourselves with food and drink so that we could just stay in bed with a hangover all day on Ash Wednesday and not eat. You gotta look at what we do and sometimes see how stupid and ridiculous what we do is to meet the letter of the law. Help provide for the needs of the church. So yes, you have to somehow, some way support the needs of the church. Now, there's different ways people might choose to do that, we have to pay our electric bill, and you want the air conditioning on in the summer and the heat on in the winter, so the parish has to have money to do that. You may want to support that to some level, or you may want to say, well, what I really want to do is support the community outreach or something like that, but you need to support the needs of the church. It's a requirement. It's a precept of the church. If you're giving nothing to the church, you're not a Catholic in good standing. Now, giving doesn't mean money, right? Time, talent, treasure is giving. Right? Some people don't have any money. So what they do is they devote lots of time. Right? Some people have special talents that not many of us don't have. So if there's a need, they provide that talent. So giving is not just moolah. It's time, talent, treasure. And it's a balance for everybody in what they have. You hear today's homily, right? For Zacchaeus, he was wealthy, a wealthy tax collector. When he encountered Jesus, he said, I will give half of what I owe to the poor. The other half I will use to reimburse the people I exploited fourfold. That's a lot of money, it's not like. Yet to the widow, who only had 2 copper coins, she gave all she had, her whole livelihood. So it's not the amount, it's what's in your heart. That's always what's important, is your intention and what's in your heart. Questions, I think?
When you said Zacchaeus, it kind of reminded me of a learning thing I had. I went through most of my life wondering why all the biblical names are no longer used. And then in South Miami, I had a lot of Muslim customers. And there was the biblical names.
Yeah.
In that part of the country, they're still using those. The world, they're still using those names. So they haven't disappeared.
And a lot of that is a cultural thing. I mean, I know a priest that purposely, when he was ordained, he's an Eastern Rite priest, he chose the name Hezekiah. I don't even know what his baptismal name was, but there's nothing wrong with choosing any biblical name. Okay? I see that Archbishop Cardinal Dolan recently said that we should get back to the custom of naming our children after saints. But the Old Testament saints are saints too. I would say Moses, Elijah, Jews do it, right? Most Jewish men and women have biblical names. It's only Catholics that decide to name their child Bubba. Which you can do. In the old Code of Canon Law, you couldn't do that. In the new Code of Canon Law, all it says is that it can't be a name foreign to Christian sensibilities. Well, what does that mean? It means you can't name your child Lucifer. But you can name him Bubba.
That would be terrible during confirmation when the bishop has to go, Bubba?
He would probably say it very quietly. Let's see, I have it here. I thought I brought in, no, hold on. Oh yeah, I do have it here. I want to give you something again that I've given you before, but in case you lost it or don't have it or didn't read it or didn't whatever got rid of it, it's this. Let me pull it up here. Large print. That you can just take one, pass it around. You may have that because I handed that out already earlier in the year, right? It's by a Greek Orthodox priest called The Defense of Closed Communion, because that's one of the sticking points that I encounter a lot. People say to me, you Catholics are not very welcome. Of course, as one of the previous year's candidates said, the moment you step into a Baptist church, they put you in a headlock right away and make you sign up. And you're a full-fledged Baptist from that day forward, right? He said, you come to the Catholic Church and they tell you got to go through OCIA if you want to be Catholic. And I think, as we said, is that a hand up? No, it's not. I thought that was a hand. That's a stretch. That's a stretch. Would you marry somebody that you met that night in a bar? I mean, would you go? That would be a case where you'd be seeing me for an annulment if you did. Right? Do you not want to get to know the person before you marry them? Yeah, getting to know you, getting to know who they are, and so forth. Do you understand how what we're doing here is preparing, for those of you coming into the church, and precisely, literally, what we're doing is preparing you for marriage. You are the bride, Jesus is the bridegroom. When you enter the church, that will be your wedding day. Does anybody, do you know anybody, I do, that said they were in an open marriage?
Oh, yes.
Did it work?
No.
Did it work? No. It never works. No, you know what I mean by an open marriage, right? A man and a woman are married, but they say, but we can have partners on the side as long as we don't fall in love with them. I'm married to you, and I'm not married to them. That sort of thing. And, of course, that's sinful, and that's also nonsense. It just doesn't work. That is the fundamental reason why we have closed communion. And as this priest, I love this article, so I could point out a couple of things here for you. I highlighted in color so we could do it. But I hate the phrase closed communion, because they're right, it does sound uninviting and unwelcoming and so forth. What I prefer is to call it monogamous communion, like in a monogamous marriage. One man, one woman for life, right? No outside partners outside of that marriage. Right? A monogamous marriage. And that's what this priest calls a monogamous communion. He gives some examples that I'm sure we could relate to now. He says a communion without borders is short-lived and futile because it is not consonant with reality itself. Forever, a country is not threatened by the existence of its borders. Its borders are what make possible a real identity and a unifying culture. Imagine a country without borders, and I will show you an imaginary country. Isn't that well said? He goes on to say, a house without a foundation and walls is not a house, but merely a continuation of space indistinguishable from other space. The same applies to personal relationships. I am capable of having union with my wife because I know where she begins and where she ends, both in body and soul. I am also capable of infidelity because the borders of the marital relationship are clear. A trespassing of these organic and necessary borders will be, at the very least, greatly harmful to the communion. Makes a few other interesting comments.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Is there a misprint on this?
I don't know.
Well, because, or did I not understand it? All right. Never mind.
Which one? Well, I don't think so. I could. Well.
I'm incapable of infidelity. It said they're capable of infidelity.
Well, anybody, of course, is capable of it. You can. You're a free person with free will. You could choose to be unfaithful to your husband. George could choose to be unfaithful to you. So you're capable of, but you yourself make your, so it's you would never do it. So it may be a funny use of that word capable, incapable, but that's what it means. Of course, we're all capable.
No, what I'm saying is that the written, I thought that should say incapable of infidelity. Because the borders are really...
So I see what it takes to be unfaithful, is what it's saying, right? The borders are clear. That means I'm capable of going outside those
No,
borders.
it's not a typo.
It's not a typo.
That's all I was saying.
That's okay. That's okay. The case for closed communion is not based on a negative premise to promote exclusivity, but on a positive one that propels and preserves, among other things, the Catholicity of the Church. The Greek word Catholicos primarily means fullness, not merely a geographical university. I've given up. People say, if you ask somebody what does Catholic mean, they'll say it means universal in Greek. No, Catholicos in Greek means wholeness or oneness. Ecumenikos in Greek means universal. But the word in English, Catholic, has come to mean universal, and so I guess, the culture has deemed it so. We have to surrender to that understanding of the word. You see what I'm saying, right?
Is that basically because there are groups that have schismed from the church that want to still claim the creeds, essentially?
Yeah. There's a certain Catholicity, a oneness, a wholeness to those who profess the Nicene Creed. You notice the Nicene Creed that we recite every Sunday as Catholic with a lowercase c, right? It's not, when you say the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, in that creed, it's not talking about us, the Catholic Church with a capital C. It's talking about the universal church, a oneness to the universal church. It was practiced uniformly and without controversy from the apostolic period until very recent times, and mirrors God's previous work among his people in the Old Testament. It is founded upon the received tradition that has always formed and informed the Christian understanding of church. And there's church with a capital C. Here's a couple of other nice, it's a long article, so that's why, I gave it to you to read. And as I say, I've given it out once before. He says, I don't know if you first coined the phrase closed communion, but I am certain it was not one of the church fathers. It is likely quite modern. This in itself might be enough to give me pause in using it, but it seems also to contain an inherent bias, an implicit agenda, much like other recent secular creations invented to put a positive spin on an old sin, like pro-choice, right? You notice that? Are you pro-choice or pro-life? They don't, the choices are really what? Are you pro-life or pro-death? But people who are pro-choice don't want to say they're pro-death, so they make a positive spin on it by saying they're pro-choice. Right? So he's saying probably closed communion was done by that same kind of thinking. And marriage equality is another one. Not that marriage inequality, that's a bad word, inequality. Marriage equality. Who in their right mind could be against equality, right? Equality is a good thing. So, two men want to marry, that's marriage equality. So, see, people could use words to put a new spin on an old sin. I like the way he said it. I love this article. And again, he's not a Catholic priest, he's a Greek Orthodox priest. But Greek Orthodox believe the same thing we do about the Eucharist. Especially in America today, the word closed carries negative connotations. One of the worst accusations possible is that of closed-mindedness. A politically correct culture will not tolerate anyone or anything that is closed, but for it to be so is de facto bigoted and intolerant. Therefore, closed communion, referring to the long-standing tradition of communing only those who are members of a unified body, is becoming an ecclesial sin. Ironically, most of us would admit that a healthy society is built upon a closed marriage. So anyway, for in reality, there is no such thing as open or closed communion. There is either communion or there is not. In other words, either there exists a communion of faith expressed in a common understanding of doctrine and worship, sacramental and spiritual practice, or such communion does not exist. Well said. Very, very well said. So you're free to, and that's why he introduces then monogamous communion, that term that I love. And he talks in a historical perspective. It is not until the beginning of the 20th century that open communion became anything more than highly unusual. Anglicans and Episcopalians, Lutherans, Baptists, Reformed, Presbyterians, and Methodists all practiced closed communion until the beginning of the 20th century. So, for your reading pleasure, that means close to, for 1900 years, the sharing of communion between Christians of different faith was quite exceptional. Good reading. Good reading. Any questions? I think, what are we doing on time? 10:30.
Deacon Henry.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a pragmatist. I have 4 questions about the right of election.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because I'm getting anxious. Because we do want to go. And it seems like everybody else knows the answer. I guess I'm in the back seat or something. Should Joe and I not be going to the altar to get blessed?
No. It's a common practice these days.
Okay,
It's a common practice.
We want to follow the rules. And then, will we go to confession prior to receiving our first communion?
Yes, you will.
Okay.
Now, we could do that one of 2 ways. You could make an appointment with Father Sebastian. It's probably the best thing to do. Or I could arrange something, like, not a group confession, but ask him, okay, we're getting close to Easter. Can you come to OCIA and maybe go into the office back here and give you the opportunity during this time to go to confession?
Okay.
But yes, if you were baptized, you have to go to confession. If you were not baptized, you do not have to go to confession, because baptism wipes out all sin, original sin and personal sin. So a person getting baptized is as clean as a newborn baby. Isn't that great?
So we have to go to confession even though we've been baptized?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, well, because I'm assuming, well, maybe not. I'm assuming you've sinned since.
Just a little. And then, do we need a sponsor present at the rite of election?
If they can, or if they can, somebody can stand in. Because sometimes like Donna, last year, your sponsor came from, where did she come from?
Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Baton Rouge, so there was an issue for her. Now, she came to the right of election, but, you know, it's unreasonable, I think. They're probably gonna come for the Easter Vigil, so you're asking them to come twice, and that might be much, you know.
And we won't, our friends won't even do it.
But they'll be here for the Easter Vigil, right?
No.
So your actual sponsor won't be here? Oh, okay. So you'll need somebody to stand in for them. All right, for both of you.
Yeah, we do. And then I was gonna ask, they offered last year, and, they're really good Catholics.
Yeah.
And, do you need their information?
Yes.
So you need like the church they attend,
Yes.
their
Yes. They-
address?
They could go to their parish office and ask for a letter saying that they're a Catholic in good standing because they're going to ask to be a sponsor, and that's all it takes. There's no deep interrogation here.
Okay. They said they wanted to interview us prior to our first communion.
Good for them.
They were joking.
They're doing the, no.
We've been best friends.
Oh, see, good for them. That's the job of a godparent, a sponsor.
Could be worse, they could be asking for your confession.
We've been best friends for a long time. I don't need to confess to her.
Before the riot.
That's before the Easter Vigil.
Before the, that's what I thought.
Was that,
That is.
we asked them all.
That was it.
Are there other questions? Yeah.
On this, that we were talking about with the closed communion, the terms and monogamous and so forth, it kind of reminds me of this difference between ecumenism, or, you know, kind of like agreement amongst people, amongst baptized believers, amongst the church, versus unity. Because I hear a lot of my Protestant friends kind of bemoan this lack of unity in the church. And they'll say, oh, we want unity. We want to create unity. But it seems to me that unity is already there. Unity comes from the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, not from any human efforts. Is that correct? Like, we don't have any kind of, like, we're invited into that, but we're not creating.
That's right. I mean, it's not just your Protestant friends here. It's Jesus himself at the Last Supper. What was the big thread that ran through the Last Supper was one of unity. Father, that they may be one as you and I are one, and that they may be in me as I am in you, and that whole thing. That a whole thread of the Last Supper is a prayer for unity. Peter, you know, their faith is going to be shaken. It's your job to hold them together. The Pope is the servant of unity. That's this. If you needed one title for the Pope, and we'll get to that because that's going to be our next topic. His job is to preserve unity of the apostolic faith in the church. So unity is that's the big word. And I forgot what your question was.
How that ties in sort of with like this idea of being in communion, like because it's like a decision. We can be in communion, right? But we don't create the communion.
No.
Like we're invited into that, right?
Yeah, and you know, there's still a lot of, what should I say? I don't want to say controversy, but, you know, the Second Vatican Council, which we should talk about in greater detail, because probably a lot of you are not aware of the vast majority of what was said at the Second Vatican Council, even though that's where we got the catechism. You know, that document is big on unity and big on, you know, those of you who have been baptized in a Protestant church, even though, you know, not a Catholic church, if you were baptized in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit with water, you're one with us by virtue of your baptism, even though there's still a wound in the body, a break between the Protestant denomination and the Catholic, you know, our Catholic faith. So there's a oneness that, in a certain sense, transcends the borders of the Catholic Church, but at the same time, there isn't. You know, and that's a very vague and already but not yet kind of situation. I think my personal opinion, I always tell you, if I'm going to tell you my opinion, I'm going to tell you my opinion. Not everything in the Second Vatican Council is dogmatic. As a matter of fact, there were no dogmatic statements. You know how that I showed you for some of the other councils, if you don't believe this, let you be anathema, let you be, no such anathemas in the Second Vatican Council. So a lot of that is still, what, for example, in Lumen Gentium, where it talks about the three faiths that worship the one true God, Catholics, Jews, and Muslims. Muslims? Do they worship the one true God?
Nope, absolutely not.
But yet the Second Vatican Council says they do. Now, I would tend to disagree with that, because God can't contradict himself. They deny that Jesus is the Son of God. They deny the Trinity. Those are kind of showstoppers, wouldn't you say? Yeah. So, somebody, was it Andy? You suggested that we should have a class on the Second Vatican Council. There's a lot of murky waters still in the Second Vatican Council. We was always taught years back that it takes a good 100 years before we could even begin to understand what a council even said. Never mind what it means, but just what it said. And we're just like 60 years outside of the Second Vatican Council.
The Vatican Council, Vatican II documents is that if you read many of the documents, they're incredible. They're inspiring, and they provide wonderful instruction for us. There are some things and some passages, as you referred to about Allah, that are just wrong. The church is striving for ecumenical feelings and wants to try to reach out and engage, but it's based on a false premise, and you have to know that that's not true. That's why you said those documents are not dogmatic. But the biggest problem with Vatican II is that there are certain ideological groups within the church who have hijacked Vatican II. And you'll hear people say over and over and over again, we have to be faithful to the spirit of Vatican II, which the spirit of Vatican II is whatever left-wing ideology or thing they want to push, whether it's climate or transgender or whatever it is, one world government, whatever it is. And you have to be careful, because you have to start off with the actual letter. You have to start off with actually what it says, and whether that is correct, and whether that conforms to the deposit of faith handed down from Jesus to the apostles. And every pope takes an oath upon the penalty and pain of death, to preserve the deposit of faith, because that is the only thing that keeps us on the rails. And so if you talk about the spirit of Vatican II, it can be anything you want. And any one of us in the room can say, I adhere to and I'm following the spirit of Vatican II. And it may be 30 or 40 diametrically different ideas. And that's cuckoo. That's not right.
Doesn't that happen in our legal system, Andy? That we have the lawyers that follow the letter of the law, and then the ones who follow the spirit of the law. And they can kind of sort of justify anything they want to say, or at least as an outsider. That's how I've always felt about our law.
It started out with a lot of good ideas. They started changing things that was kind of logical, but towards the end it all fell apart.
Yeah, look at the example we looked at last week, where Vatican II calls for full and active participation in the Mass. That's a good thing. Right? That's a good thing. You just don't want to be a pew potato in church and okay, something happened. You want to unite yourself with that sacrifice. But what does that mean? And in the example I gave, the person who fully and most completely had full active participation in the first Eucharist was Mary at the foot of the cross, and she didn't say a word, So, but how did that get interpreted? Oh, we got to have hula dancers, and we have to have rock bands, and we have to have light shows. That's full active participation. That's that's the spirit of Vatican II. That's what we got to do. No, we don't.
Don't forget the fog machines and merchandise tables.
Yes. What gets me too is there's always some kind of a musical setup over in a corner with drums in a church. Now wait a minute.
Wow.
You walk into one of some of these new churches after the Second Vatican Council, and that's what you see. And it just, everything was torn apart. The church, the altar used to be set up with the tabernacle on the highest point in the church. And that's where you would be drawn to, but from all across the church, is to that center point. And what's the first thing they did? They ripped that out and put it off to the side. Tabernacle was no longer up at the top. The priest was never sitting there busy doing what he has to do in front of the tabernacle. He's turned around doing it in front of everybody else with his back to the tabernacle or maybe off to the side. Everything was kittywampus. It just never was the same again.
Oh, like one of our former RCIA people said, I love this line and I've used it. He goes, I went to visit another church and the priest wasn't a presider at a sacred liturgy. He was more like a TV game show host, you know?
And you have to keep in mind, two of the main reporters at Vatican II were John Paul II, St. John Paul II, and Benedict XVI. And they, for the most part, were very, very orthodox, very, very conservative. And Pope Benedict liked to talk about Vatican II in the context of a hermeneutic of continuity, which I think turned out later he saw to be more wishful thinking than actual reality. And the hermeneutic of continuity means that you don't see Vatican II as a rupture or break from the past. You see it as a continuous faithfulness to the deposit of faith. And that would be nice if it were true, but it's not true all the time. And toward the end of his life, I think he saw that it had gone in a different direction.
Off the rails.
And we talk also about the liturgy. The liturgy for the church is everything, because that's exactly, remember your first quiz. What is the main teaching tool of the church? Not the catechism, not the magisterium, it's the liturgy, because that expresses in a synthesized, condensed form all of our faith. And we had the Latin Mass. In 1970, we had the Novo. But a lot of people don't know that in '67 we had a different Novo type Mass that was not as did not deviate as much from the Latin Mass. It was in English. It had more reverence and dignity. And then somebody somehow decided that wasn't modern enough, and we didn't have the spirit of hootenanny and snare drums and clown and balloon stuff. So we had to make sure that people understood you can do all sorts of crazy stuff you want. And so we got the Novo. But to Deacon Henry's point, many times if the Novo is said very reverently, very with dignity, and with the seriousness and concentration, it's wonderful.
I think it's more beautiful than the traditional Latin Mass if it's done right.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know how much I love Father Sebastian, but I gotta tell you,
this class is about nuance and truth. You have to be very careful and weigh everything. What does St. Paul said? Test all of the spirits. Some are lying.
Who mentioned drums? Did you mention drums, right? No.
I think it was Tim.
Tim mentioned the drum. I love Father Sebastian, but I gotta tell you this story because it's hilarious. One day at Mass, we were having a problem with the sound system of the choir. And so they were talking to me like they were able to hear the piano. And Father Sebastian overheard and he said, yeah, the drums were way too loud. We don't have drums.
He was thinking of St. Joseph.
He was probably thinking.
They have a whole orchestra.
They have a full brass, they have, you name it there.
And they allow trombones.
And they have trombones, Bob plays the trombone.
There was a timpani drum at the cathedral we went to Christmas Mass for, but it was all up in the back, you don't see it, and it was just the one drum and the organ. But it was beautiful. You hear it coming. But I think the point that Tim was making with the drums is this man-centered rock star mentality of, we got to have people over here rocking out and really try to make things cool.
I tell them some jokes to keep them happy,
Right.
We old people are used to the choir out back. We're
up in the choir loft.
Yeah, in the choir loft. They weren't that important to the Mass. And I think that was a mistake, taking them out of the choir.
Well, look at the language. Look how it's changed. We went from choir to music ministry. Right? Now all of a sudden it's a ministry. And of course, in a certain sense, it is. That's the problem, but now it becomes the center because it becomes entertainment. People applaud at the end of the song. That means you're at a concert. I love, I don't know if those of you who go to the 5 o'clock Mass, if anybody's been to the 5 o'clock Mass, we have a relatively new parishioner in the choir. I still call it the choir. Her name is Athena Greco. You know? She's a professionally trained opera singer, but not a heavy operatic voice. That would be beautiful. And she once said the best compliment she has ever received from anybody was not applause. It was when someone came up to her afterwards and said, thank you for helping us to pray. There is the spirit of the choir, music ministry, if you want to call it. It's to help us to pray. St. Augustine said, he who sings prays twice, right? But at the same time, we don't want to lose the balance of sacred music. Sacred means set apart for God. That means what you hear at the hall in a Christian concert or at the conference or whatever is not what you hear at Mass. At Mass, it's not.
I think our anointing Mass that happens once a month is a great example of the way music should be during a Mass.
Yeah.
Everyone should attend that anointing Mass.
Try that one
To
at least one time.
really see Catholicism at its best.
Third Friday of the month at 7 o'clock in the shrine. Although pretty soon the shrine is going to be closed for renovation, so we're going to have to move
And
into
there's
the
a
church.
decade good.
Yeah, that's going to be, they say it's going to take 6 months.
That's what they said about this place.
It's a major renovation. New ceiling, new walls, new art, new.
Are you gonna expand it?
No, they're not going to, I don't think they can. But they want to, try to make it a little bit. Yeah.
I could publish a picture of that church the way it was when it was in downtown High Springs, and what we have now is beautiful.
Yeah,
compared to
So
that.
that's gonna move adoration and everything to the main part?
They're going to have to, because it's going to be a gutting kind of renovation. They're going to put new wainscoting on the walls. I think they're going to open up the ceiling so it's like that. There are going to be artists in there painting murals. So this is it's going to be beautiful. And this is all thanks to one generous benefactor who's doing all this.
Is Marisol going to do some of the artwork? Because I know she's been painting the office quite a bit.
As long as it's done in egg tempera or fresco, we'll be fine.
I'm reluctant to start the next topic of authority in the church, a very important one, as you can imagine, because we only have like 10 minutes left. So if you have any other questions, let's yeah.
Yeah, so
What happened to Terry today?
She's actually not feeling well
Oh,
today,
no.
so she said to let you know that she apologized. She
Okay, yeah, tell her we missed her.
And I was a little late because I was working on a school assignment, and I just got turned in, so.
Okay.
I was like, oh, it's just took like 10, 20 minutes to finish this one little thing up, and it took like an hour and a half.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Yeah, so why don't we have technology, and is that taking away from the liturgy?
No, I mean, Donna might want to comment on this, and why do we have technology? Like, a lot of churches now have the big TV screens. I think for us, a lot of the issue has been space. Where do we put it, If you were to cover one of the statues of Mary or St. Joseph, you can't do that. And look at our church, where exactly, now Donna's an architect, and she has some ideas, right, about how we might be able to accomplish that. But, and of course, the other side of it is it takes money. It's these big screen TVs where the projectors are not cheap, but yeah, the parish, Father Sebastian is looking at doing that.
Okay.
If we replace the pews at some point, because I've heard that several times people are mentioning, can we not go with the padded Protestant pews?
Yeah, I think.
Because it gives it a more traditional feel to have the.
Oh, I wanted them warm seats and air conditioning.
Lazy boys.
How about like they have in movie theaters now, where each person gets a recliner?
Yeah, there we go.
Take a nap during the homily.
Actually, it turns out, it looks like we're not going to replace the pews. They want to make it a church more in the round, so instead of the right angles, it's more. So there might be some, have to buy some pews to be able to do that. But as somebody pointed out, those pews are made of solid mahogany or something from 100 years ago, and they're worth a fortune, and why don't we just refinish them? And, refinishing them is maybe a little bit over half the price of replacing them, but, that still, it means you save half the money. And they've been pretty much repaired. You know, the mahogany seats, they're made out of plank. You know how furniture gets made, right? It's planks that are and they started to separate, but Dick Ferner has been repairing them, and he goes, you can't see, but I've reinforced pretty much all of them from underneath, so I don't know what's going to happen with that. You know, again, pews for our church, right now with the price of lumber, and if Trump goes and puts 100% tariff on Canada because of their thing with China, right now the pews for our church would be about $150,000 to $200,000 for the pews. If we have a 100% tariff, double that number.
Are they looking still at varnishing or painting?
Refinishing.
Sanding them down and staining them and boom. That'd be expensive.
That's about half the price of replacing them. So, yeah, Mickey?
One thing I found interesting is I said I haven't gone to any other churches except that one Sunday that I went to Lake City. They have the curved pews.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, in like the first 4 or 5 rows in front are the same length, and then you come back and the next rows they're still curved, but they leave a place at the end, which is nice because if you have a walker or a wheelchair, it gives them that flexibility of being able to sit there, and I thought that was really nice.
No, Epiphany is much bigger than us, so they had some freedom of space to do things that we may not have.
I didn't find that they were any bigger, but anyway.
Okay, from my memory, it's a bit bigger.
Yeah.
And as far as the padded ones go, I think we've decided against that because, maintenance of that. A child spills their drink or something, which is going to happen, and then it's ugly when you have padded pews that are stained, And the ones they have at Holy Faith, they're padded pews, but they're not affixed. So they're always sliding all over the place. That would slop you. So we're probably just not going to go with anything padded. We're going to have Catholic pews.
Well, the other thing is that the Catholic Church, when you pray, you stand up. Well, you're not sitting that much. So why does it matter if they're padded or not?
That's what I was thinking.
Well, it used to be they just stand there for hours and hours and hours. And, the story about the kid falling out of the window, and then being resurrected.
European churches didn't have pews at all. Many Orthodox churches, they don't have pews. Yeah.
The Orthodox Church, their liturgy, you barely sit down.
Yeah.
The whole liturgy, you stand almost the entire liturgy. It's almost like 2 hours long.
And they have pews now because people like me getting older need to sit down after a while. It's too much. When I've gone to some of the older Orthodox, very old Orthodox churches up north, there are no pews. There are an occasional bench on the side that you have to sit. But it's not meant for people to sit.
So the people sitting on those back benches with the soft cushion, they're not really.
They're the Protestants.
They're not going all the way.
All right, any other questions? I guess we're.
No, but there's a lot of this in that.
The plan going forward is authority in the church, and then conscience, and then 2 weeks of Andy with the theology of the body. And I like that sequence. Andy and I were discussing it because once you understand authority in the church, once you understand the proper role of conscience, then you could properly assess the information in theology of the body because it's really moral theology as applied to marriage. And so you can get a better grasp of what Pope John Paul II was saying at that. Anything? If I don't know who you are, please let me give you an information sheet to fill out. Tell Bob.
Yeah, I need names, addresses, and text numbers so that I can include you in our weekly mailing of what's coming up. And occasionally Deacon wants to send out something because something special is happening. So for everyone to be included in that, I need the contact information.
All right. Now let's close the glory be to the Father, to the Son, to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. See you all next week.
Thank you.
No, I'm
Harper's at a birthday party. They have someone speaking before class today. It's kind of a weird thing because the party was going on yesterday. So they must have, I guess they're not like, I know they're Christian, I think they're Baptist, but I guess they're not like super religious. Yeah, but, you know, we try to let her go to that kind of stuff, most of the and then Brittany this morning woke up and wasn't feeling good, so she was still sleeping when I left the house. So, I woke her up this morning and tell her it's time to get ready. She's like, I'm not feeling good. And I was like, all right, go back to sleep. We'll carry on without you. But I'll be feeling better when I get home. And I heard someone told me this morning the flu's going around.
And that's like Tim, he gets.
Well, you know what? When I felt like this, smartphones first came out, my first smartphone was Android, smartphone, and I hated it. And I had a friend.
Oh, yeah. And it seems like when you live in the forest like we do, it seems like there's something all the time there.
It looks like the Android phones are kind of grown up.
Yeah. I did an allergy test because I got the allergy shots for a couple of years. It was supposed to help me out. It didn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
But when I did my allergy test, I found out I'm allergic to everything that grows there. I'm allergic to apples, which I usually eat. I'm allergic to all kinds of foods. And then worst of all, dust. When they did that little thing they put in my skin, it was that big. You know, like that big is pretty bad. She said, I've never seen anyone